Section 3 or Section 4, Chapter 6, Nibbāna or Nirvana, Supreme Peace, Chapter 6, Introduction 6.1. Human beings encounter many trials and tribulations. The situation can be summed up in one following word: Dukkha. Most people freely acknowledge that life, both on a personal and a social level, involves facing problems. These problems affect their happiness and present moral dilemmas. A close inspection reveals that all of these problems stem from the same source. That is, by the very nature, human life is endowed with problems, or it has the potential to cause problems. Saying that the purpose of life is to pursue happiness implies suffering. The very search for happiness reveals an interdeficiency that drives people to seek fulfillment. This suffering, dukkha, has many consequences. The search for sukha, happiness, gives rise to conflicts of interest and to social problems. What begins as a personal problem is magnified and spread outwards. Yet this description is still rather ambiguous. For the sake of clarity, one needs to get to the heart of the matter. A basic truth of life is that it is characterized by dukkha. The very nature of human life is marked by the universal characteristics of dukkha. Human life is conditioned phenomenon, sankhara, in Pali language, subject to various causes and conditions. It is impermanent, unstable, fleeting, and devoid of any lasting self or substance. One is unable to sustain life or to shape it purely according to one's desires. One must conform to causes and conditions. This is dukkha on a more fundamental level. Now, the translation of dukkha is profound. The translation could be, there are many English translations for dukkha, including suffering, unsatisfactoriness, stress, pain, misery. Gautama Buddha used this word in different contexts, most notably in the thethreekindsoffeeling, the three characteristics, referring to dukkha as stress and pressure inherent in conditioned phenomena. He also used this term in the Ariya Satya, the Four Noble Truths, referring to human suffering caused by avijja and tanha, ignorance and craving. And finally, he used dukkha in three kinds of vedanā, the three kinds of feeling, referring to painful sensation. Now, the dukkha fundamental to life can be summed up by the words aging, jara, and death, marana, or by the words decay and dissolution. In the wake of this fundamental, dukkha follows dukkha as human feelings and emotions, for example, suffering and distress, grief and regret. Due to the fact that life is characterized by a basic form of dukkha, for people to truly solve problems, bringing suffering to an end and experience real happiness, they must firmly abide in satya, the truth. To begin with this, they must come to terms with the fundamental characteristics of dukkha by applying paññā, wisdom, in order to free it or to live with it at ease and not create problems around it. If one is unable to reach this state, one should at least gain insight into the fundamental dukkha and develop a proper mental attitude in regard to it. One thus acknowledges and faces the truth with understanding. If people lack this stability and and are unable to come to terms with the fundamental characteristics of dukkha, they allow it to become a hidden problem lying within. They then try to bury their problems and turn to a blind eye to suffering. They end up deceiving themselves, and the problems festering in the mind intensify and increase. People claim that they desire happiness and are adverse to suffering, but they often create problems for themselves precisely through the means they use to achieve happiness. Instead of dispelling suffering and generating happiness, they evade suffering in order to pursue happiness. They do not attend to the underlying roots of suffering. Their problems then develop into more serious mental complexity. Instead of dispelling or reducing suffering, they increase and compound it, both within themselves and outward in their conflicts with society. For those people who attempt to cover up and conceal their sufferings, their pursuit of happiness indicates a sense of lack, distress, anxiety, and unhappiness. They seek things in order to feel fulfilled or to dispel their agitation. Yet in this search, they come into conflict with others. Moral issues in society thus becomes intensified. By attending to suffering incorrectly, people vent their frustrations outwards, increasing suffering both for themselves and others. As a consequence, the inherent stress, which is part of the parcel of conditioned nature of life, is neglected rather than addressed. With their singular ingenuity, people concoct a whole host of problems until the basic predicament of life, of inherent stress, is virtually forgotten. People may even delude themselves by thinking that happiness results from turning a blind eye to suffering, dukkha. To make matters worse, that inherent dukkha, which has been avoided, covertly incites people to search for and indulge in ever more passionate, restless forms of pleasure, deriving them from confidence and contentment. As a result, moral crises in society become more serious. For instance, through the increase of competition and oppression, and suffering is exacerbated. As long as people are unable to come to terms with this fundamental aspect of life, unable to reconcile themselves to the universal characteristics of dukkha, they will not succeed in resolving their problems. They will not escape the oppression of dukkha, no matter how much pleasure they experience. They will not meet with the true, constant happiness, which is intrinsically complete and fully satisfying. Human life involves solving problems, seeking release from suffering. But if we do not know the correct way leading to freedom, our attempted solutions to these problems only bring about increased suffering. The greater the effort, the greater the affliction, becoming an ever more complex cycle, a whirlpool of suffering. This state of affairs is samsaravata, the wandering around, or in Lao or Thai, vinvai thai good. The whirlpool of suffering, the state of affairs of samsaravata, the round of rebirth, which Gautama Buddha explained in the teaching of dependent origination, paticca-samuppada. Under the cycle of origination, samudaya vara, and the forward sequence of anuloma paticca-samuppada. No, there's a forward and backward sequence of going through the steps of dependent originations, depending how we look at causes and conditions, or conditions and causes. There is a revered There it is revealed how human suffering arises according to causes and effect. People are able to face the truth and to understand the true nature of dukkha. Besides being free of mental disorders that create and compound problems, they will be able to develop paññā, wisdom, and to free their minds, even to the fundamental dukkha inherent in life. The stress and pressures inherent in nature is recognized simply for what it is. It then has no power to create suffering in the minds of these individuals. Even before they have reached complete liberation, Nibbāna, or moksha, those people who are deceived or obstructed by unhealthy mental complexities create from unresolved suffering are able to experience happiness in a full and satisfactory way. At the time, they have the opportunity to develop happiness by accessing ever more refined, independent, spacious, replete, and pure forms of happiness until they eventually realize that happiness is completely free from suffering. Their pathway to happiness is unrestricted and limitless. When Gautama Buddha taught the dependent origination, he did not end with the origin of suffering. He also taught the cycle of cessation, nirodha vara pati sammupata, which is the process of turning back or turning away, the end of suffering. Human suffering can be remedied, and there are always ways to achieve this. Gautama Buddha went on to reveal the supreme state in which humans are able to live noble lives, enjoy genuine happiness, and bring true benefit and meaning to life. They become free without having to rely on any external or to depend on the happiness determined by conditioned phenomenon. Conditioned phenomenon cannot sustain themselves, let alone sustain our happiness. Happiness depends on external things, offers no true support, since it is continually reliant on these things. Seeking meaning in this insecure form of happiness results in losing freedom and independence. Although one may not fully attain the state of turning away at first, to the extent that one correctly attends to problems, reducing to the force of the origination cycle and increasing the force of cessation cycle, suffering will gradually abate. One's life will be enhanced. One will be able to experience the pleasures of the world with wisdom, not enslaved to them or harmed by their influctuating currents. Worldly pleasures will not be a source of trouble to oneself or others. And this healthy relationship to pleasure will promote well-being within society. The discussion here focuses on the cessation cycle and the end of suffering, which directly oppose the origination cycle with its resultant suffering.